Welcome to Podvincible, a podcast about Invincible. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we're going to be talking about episode 3 of season 3. You want a real costume, right? And lots of stuff going down in this episode. If you haven't watched it on Prime Video, please do, because we're going to spoil it starting right now. But big, broad overview here. We start with a montage of two villain characters trying to go right, and they just cannot do it, leading to them turning out to be side characters in the story of Oliver being trained by Invincible. That's one of the big themes of the episode, as Oliver still doesn't quite understand why you can't kill people, leading to him killing the Mauler twins by the end of the episode during a showdown between them and the Guardians of the Globe. But a lot of other things are going on as Eve hangs out with Amber. I'm sure we'll be talking about that almost immediately, but to blast past that for a second, Eve and Mark are figuring out their new relationship now that they're dating. Debbie and Paul go wine tasting, and she confesses everything to him. And at the end of the episode, we get a little bit of a villain reveal that I'm sure we can talk about as well. Oh, and also the Guardians of the Globe, now that they're separated and back in the Teen Team headquarters, kind of figuring out their new living situation as well. Lots of other stuff going on in the episode, so that's the broad stuff. But as we usually do, let's start with the romance. Just last episode, we spent a lot of time talking about Amber and Mark and Eve, and not even the love triangle there, because it's more of a love line and a dot at this point.
No, man. I'm not going to let you. This was a fun episode. There was almost an Amber situation, like the fact
Amber
that
alert.
Yeah, it was. There was almost.
Is that what I'm getting on my phone?
I'm so sorry. Yes,
this was, first off,
that's what Pete's getting.
Fantastic episode. Maybe one of my favorites. The opening, like
Really?
no dialogue, just kind of music playing montage was beautiful. It's impressive to see the swings taken and the art. I just felt like there was some really powerful, beautiful stuff happening in the beginning, and I didn't want the sound to come back on in dialogue. I was having such a fun time with these people. But the Amber situation...
Hold on. You're saying like so many things. Just wait a second.
I'm very excited. Excited.
Yes. No, obviously. I do think that this season, and we talked about last episode, I thought really plussed up.
Yeah, you said this last episode was your favorite.
Right. And my take on the first episode was there was so much happening, they had to sort of like, put it through a funnel so it would like focus up a little bit. And then these last two episodes, I agree, like starting to really theme a bit and sort of lock in and maybe what the overall tone or big idea behind the season is, which I think is like morality, reform, like what the gray area between villain and hero, which I think is super interesting for this show that goes so hard, but is also asking us to think hard at the same time.
Yeah, think hard. I love it. I also think it's an interesting idea of we have these discussions of like, killing is bad, you shouldn't, that kind of back and forth. We've seen it so many different times, but the kind of having a younger kid, who kids have these real right and wrong and like, hey, you do it. Like, I thought it was an interesting twist that made it feel a little bit more new and fresh. So, but all right, the Amber situation. So we open up with Eve coming out of class, and I was like, why are we doing this, Eve? And then I was like, oh my God, this is a way in for Amber, because Eve is going to run into Amber. And then they ran into each other. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God. Is Eve going to say that she's to Amber? I mean, why would she? Oh, man, what if Amber finds out? But the fact that Amber was asking about the family, it was like, oh, okay, great.
Pete, you're worried. The TMZ of the Amber Eve
yeah,
situation.
So,
sorry,
but then, wait, no.
I just have a quick question. This is for you. How many Mountain Dews did you have this morning?
None. So, listen. I'm high on Amber. So listen, I was just like so excited with anticipation, like, oh my God, this is go a number of different ways. But then the Amber gave me the kiss of death of like, oh, I'm dating somebody new. And she was like, oh yeah, me and Mark really weren't a thing. And I was like, Amber, Amber, you were so close. You were right on the precipice, and then ruined it. So Oh, what an emotional roller coaster. But the fact that, they had a nice chat and can be friends was really kind of nice and sweet. So I liked it.
I agree. It was nice. And the revelation that Amber is dating Kyle. Pete, have you Googled Kyle? Have you tried to Facebook stalk him? Are you?
Kyle doesn't exist. Yeah. I don't want to. Yeah.
You don't believe in Kyle?
I don't believe in Kyle.
Amber's lying.
I think she's lying.
She's single.
But did you notice that when Eve had the roof moment with Mark, which has now become a thing where they just hang out on the roof and talk about their feelings, she was like, I ran into Amber, and Mark got really squeamish. She was like, but then Eve just changed the subject. Well, I was like, oh, maybe Eve doesn't want to drill down on that so quickly.
Now, Pete, you've advocated in the past on another podcast for roof sex in the Batman-Catwoman relationship. Do you feel like we're headed there, and are you excited about that?
No, I'm not excited about the Eve and Mark relationship yet. I'm still, pulling for Amber over here. So,
Well, not to push too hard on this point, but when we were talking about the Batman Catwoman stuff, we're definitely talking about like the flat, dirty, disgusting roofs of Gotham City. Here, they're on a suburban slanted roof that's presumably, I believe, shingled. How is that? How is that for sex, Pete?
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be rougher and harder, so it's
so good.
Yeah.
Also, that incline is real. If from the street you look up at the incline, you're like, oh, it's not bad. But when you're up,
I gotta say, is good angles. Oh boy!
Wow.
All right, if you just want to perv out on roof sex, I guess we can talk about that.
Pete, we've talked
dangerous
about
to me. I feel like you're going to slide off the roof. To be honest,
well, that's part of the.
That's part of the fun. Yeah, the excitement of it. Yeah, exactly.
The taboo.
Yeah,
we might break all of our bones.
Pete, we've talked about probably thousands of topics on podcasts over the years. I've never seen you speak with such authority and knowledge as when you were just talking about having sex on a roof. So shouts to whatever.
Well, I just had to redo my roof. You know what I mean? So it's like I had to get up there
because you had too much sex.
Yeah, well, he did it the first time, and then he had to redo it.
Yeah, exactly. Another go around, real quick.
Yeah, and real quick, how are you laying down that hot tar, Pete?
You gotta be careful, man. You gotta be careful.
No paintbrush necessary. Well, I mean, it's interesting to talk about these two scenes in relation to each other because I think the Eve-Mark relationship is progressing so quickly. Like their first date,
I would say it's a snail's pace. It's barely crawling by this relationship.
But the depth of their connection,
which is great because I'm not ready for it yet. You know what I mean?
Well, but I think it's definitely the opposite. They feel like they're talking about it's a first date. They do know each other really well, but their connection, their care for each other, this feels like a newly married couple that is just like.
Well, take it easy, dude. They just had their first date, bro. But I got to be honest with you, the fact that Eve knows Invincible so well and is able to kind of like. She has so much history, knows kind of like how he is about stuff. It's great because he really needed that, and he was in a tough spot.
That's why you should always date your coworkers. I think.
I don't think that's dangerous to say.
So, Justin, I don't know if this is exactly what you're getting at, but the thing that's been bothering is probably too strong a word
because Batman says the opposite of that. And again, we're talking a lot about Batman today.
Even Mark, there's still no heat there. Like they have skipped the thrill, giddy to see each other phase, and they're like, "Yep, we're dating now. Sounds good. Let's figure out what this means." And I don't know. I've never been in a situation where I've dated a long-term friend, but I have to imagine there isn't like great, and then we switch off and we're doing the same thing.
Not a flex.
Absolutely not. But I feel like there needs to be that sort of dancing around each other of, ooh, what does this mean now? What is our relationship now that it's changed? Rather than it feels like from the writing perspective, they skipped ahead to like, yeah, we know where we're getting to. Let's move forward. Let's go.
Well, but I don't know. It strikes me as it's maybe intentional. Like they may.
First off, Justin, before you start talking, can you tell us? Do you have maybe a history with dating someone who's a friend first? Like, we want to know your expertise.
I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm an expert on dating, but I mean, I've dated. Yes, I guess the short answer is yes. And it has.
What Pete is getting at, for anybody who doesn't know, Justin dated Jennifer Aniston and Lisa Kudrow. So he has a lot of experience dating friends.
At the same time, awkward on set. Ooh. But I was trying to say I think it might be intentional. Like the fact they're sort of always at an DEFCON 1, like super stressed. So I think that means they have to deal with so much of this emotionality before they get the thrill of a new relationship. And because they have known each other for so long, it's hard to have that getting to know you period. So I feel like that's something they're going to investigate probably pretty soon when the relationship from a rooftop perspective heats up.
Why don't we
one
talk?
more thing.
Yeah.
One more before we move off this stuff. I do want to jump back to Amber for a sec because I thought it was interesting the way they were talking about it. And Amber does seem truly at peace with the way that her relationship with Mark ended and moved on. But she talks about how they were from different worlds. Do you think if Amber had powers, it would be different? Or Amber thinks that if she had powers, it would be different and they would be together?
I don't know that just based on what we're getting. If we were talking about like extension into her being a real person, sure, maybe that's a thought that would go through her head. But in terms of the show, that doesn't seem like a plot line or anything they're interested in at all. Where Amber experiments with powers or something. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, but think about this. Like maybe in a season or two from now, right? Mm-hmm. Amber gets powers and then shows up and is like, "Hey, Mark, what's up?" You know what I mean? Like,
so I don't want to call you out, but you said, "Hey, Pete, what's up?" Amber, you're talking about Amber as if she's dating you. You keep saying she goes up to Pete Invincible and says, "Hey, what's up?" On a date. You did. You just did that. Run the tape back. You did. You're talking about it in the first person.
Well, we just played it back for the podcast listening audience, and yes, it was confirmed. So there you go. Anyway, moving on to the other dating relationship, we get a lot more on Debbie and Paul this episode as they go wine tasting, and Debbie confesses what?
Were you guys not moved at all by the opening?
We can get back to that, but I was talking about another topic.
Okay, all right.
But yes, I thought it was very moving. I liked it a lot. I kind of wished it had tied into the episode more, which...
How dare you?
Here's the thing. We've said this before, and I'm definitely cribbing off of Justin here, but a lot of Invincible is like, here's the Invincible news, and some of it goes a little deeper into op-eds, and some of it doesn't. But I wish the idea of this redemption or lack of redemption idea that they present at the beginning, which they spent a lot of time on, played throughout the episode into all of the characters, rather than them being like, is this an interesting thing we're trying? Well, see you later.
So you guys didn't start crying immediately when the bank robber saw the family that was at the bank robbery and couldn't look at him and got a wave and a smile as he walked past? That didn't just hit you?
I was crying before that because the very idea of a bank robbery, like that poor money, it's being taken from its house.
Kidnapped. That money's being kidnapped.
Oh my God.
That's really why Alex has a hard time spending money because he's like, goodbye $10 bill.
Every time I go to the teller at the bank and I take out some money, I'm sobbing. I am in tears.
I'd like to adopt
it's all new
$100 from
friends.
this
It's
ATM.
all
like,
new friends.
You'll be back eventually. Don't worry. It'll make its way back around.
I just picture Alex at a table with a bunch of money on chairs and he's pouring soup onto them from a spoon.
Manhattan clam chowder, baby.
No, exactly. Money loves a Manhattan. Cream soup's no good for money. I really like the cold opens they've done in the last two episodes. I think are really good. Like the Cecil one last episode and this one. Really cool. I agree it didn't feed into the main plot, but I think it goes to the larger season thematic that we're talking about here. And the idea of like flipping perspective and having our sympathies in POV be with the villains, like sort of goofy villains that we expect.
How dare you?
The guy's got like, prehensile gum coming out of his chest.
Yeah,
he was in a very loving and beautiful relationship. Like, what are you talking about?
I know he has a real character name, but I wrote down Bubble Tape Guy repeatedly.
That is. I remember Bubble Tape. Anyway,
it was about 6 feet of bubblegum for you and not them. Is what he said.
Anyways, I did think it because they're talking about not killing and how villains, just because you don't know somebody, they have lives, they have people who care about them. And I thought we got to see that before Oliver got to see that. So I thought
we
it was
all like this, Pete. I don't know why you're getting
Well, you're saying it didn't dovetail into the episode, and I'm saying it does. It's very much.
I agree
it fed
with you.
directly into the next scene in the episode, but thematically, I agree with what Justin is saying in terms of it dealing with the overall thematic of the season, but I'm a big believer in episodic television and focusing on what are you telling over the course of this hour, and that's not thematically what we're getting here.
Well, I disagree, because it's setting up this thing of what's right and wrong, who's bad and good, and the fact that you shouldn't kill people. I thought it was a great exploration of that idea through these characters in the beginning. And when Oliver realizes, like, oh, my mom is a human, all these people have lives, and like the bank robbers, just because they had a bad moment doesn't mean they deserve to die or get punched through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
so I think it does all happen in one episode nicely.
No, that's fair. That is a very good point. Thank you, Pete.
Well, and I would, but back on my season-long thing, I feel like the last episode where we saw Invincible, or maybe it was the first episode, just plow through the multi-Paul character clones and have no problem killing them. And then we get the villain perspective here. Then we see Oliver kill the Mauler twins, which are also clones, but Invincible's mad at him about it. So like it's just getting into it's such a gray area of the superhero.
And
morality.
They both had the same defense of like, it was an accident. That's what Oliver opened up with, just like Invincible opened up with.
But I do think, and this is like the larger discussion of the fathering and sonning of this show with Omni-Man, Invincible's doing for Oliver what Omni-Man did for Invincible in the first season. But we're seeing it much more from Mark's perspective, and he's like, I'm not good at this. This is hard. Explaining morality is hard, especially when, as we see, Oliver has Nolan's morality. He's like, they're bad. I killed them. The end. I'm a space bug. Half space bug. So like we kill people, we live shorter lives. Life means something different to his culture, I think. We learned a little bit of that. Maybe I'm bringing some of the comic book knowledge here, but like it's just so complicated. And I think the show is leaning into that in a way that is, a much bigger idea than I think other shows do.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because we're getting different kind of dads and perspective of kind of like what is right and how do you kind of raise somebody, where you got Eve who's kind of talking to her parents, and you got the kind of dad who just wants a beer, and you kind of have this. It's an interesting, like we're getting a lot of different kind of senses of it, and it's very kind of a cool exploration for a cartoon, I feel like.
This also ties into one thing that I skipped in the recap, which is the new costumes, which obviously is a big deal for the show and the comic book, and everyone was psyched when it was in the trailer. And tying into what we're talking about here, one, we get Oliver wanting to call himself Kid Omni-Man, which definitely points to exactly what you guys are saying in terms of him idolizing Omni-Man, idolizing Nolan, and not understanding why it's bad to do it. He also turns into doing the same kind of thing as Omni-Man by the end of the episode. And Mark gets his black and blue costume, which is darker, which is murkier, which again ties into the overall themes. Even if he calls it more serious. More serious.
Yeah. Why so serious?
Yes, he says that, which I thought was copyrighted, but I guess not.
What do you guys think? Can you just say that? If you can just say that, get ready. I'm saying that shit all the time.
Yeah. Can you say Bane quotes from The Dark Knight Rises? Because that's going to change everything.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Next work meeting, they're going to love me.
They're going to love me.
I was raised in the Zoom.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Pretty good.
What do we think about the costumes, though? How are you feeling about them? Just on an aesthetic level.
It's just great to see Art, spend some time with Art. And, he was like, oh, kids, I remember kids.
I prefer the yellow Invincible costume just pure aesthetically. But I like the idea that he's getting older, the costume's getting older, and it's sort of forcing him to be more serious, and because he's dealing with much more difficult issues. So that's cool. That's a nice transition point. And Artie is just like such a classic nice guy, old timer. I was like, wow, so earnest in a show that's often pretty like edgy and arch. He's just like, I remember when a kid was young like that too. I was like, oh, sick.
It did remind me, I had kind of forgotten about the scenes in previous seasons where he walks into the Grayson house and was like, hey, Debbie, how's it going? Well, see you later. So I hope, fingers crossed, we get another one of those. Speaking of which, I actually do not care about this much, but I just want to talk about it because I brought it up earlier. How are we feeling about Debbie and Paul and her telling Paul about Nolan, Mark, and Oliver?
That was fun. It was hilarious to kind of see Paul deal with it a little bit and then try to leave. And she's like, oh, no, you can't leave now, bro. You're in too deep. And, kind of does the old jump kiss move. So, Paul's in Paul's in too deep. He's got no choice. Hopefully he doesn't blow it because he knows secrets and people could die. So I don't know if he knows how deep he's in, but.
Were Debbie and Paul on one long date? They've just been on one continuous date
it's never stopped.
so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's called marriage, by the way, Justin.
Whoa.
Really?
Wow.
I had a ceremony and I said, do you agree to be on one long date for a while? Share wine tasting notes?
And it all worked out. What about the teen team? I guess that's what we're
before you're off Debbie, do we I really love the line when Invincible and Oliver walk in on Debbie and Paul, and Mark's like, we were at a comic book store opening. Are you guys going to mate now? Great 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Really that was very fun. Teen Team, we get a little bit with them. We get stuff with Rudy and Rex, and Ray gets her new room. This felt very much like a checking in with the cast and seeing where they're at to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Rex had some great one-liners in there. It was, there's baby steps. It was fun to kind of see what's going on with them and their kind of new digs. And also at first I was like, oh, why is Eve here? But then she was like, oh, yeah, I used to be here too. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. I guess I'm a little defensive about Eve, but I got to get over it.
I'm glad you're willing to admit that you're weird about it. What a great thing to say. I did think it was interesting the way that Rex, if Jason Mantzoukas wasn't voicing Rex, I feel like he would be a non-character. And the rise of Rexplode because of Mantzoukas is so funny to me.
Yeah.
He's just nonstop.
He's hilarious. And also Sonic is a lot of fun in this. He had some fun one-liners. He's like, and now I say something.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Good voice cast. I think we can all agree with that. While we are checking in on people, oh gosh, I lost my notes, but there was another sort of check-in thing that we had. Oh yeah, we checked in on the crime syndicate, which I haven't thought about in a season and a half, where we get Jabberjaw or whatever his name is demanding that they get Multi-Paul out of prison from Titan, and the order wants, they want. I know that's not the name of the character, but
I think it's Iron Jaw. Jabberjaw is a giant shark.
Mr. Lou, if I remember.
Sure, Mr. Lou, but they call him
Jabberjaw.
Yeah. There's the thing.
Nobody calls him Jabberjaw, bro, except for you.
Jabberjaw and Bubble Tape coming next season on Prime Video.
Yeah.
Wow. Frame of reference from mid-90s.
Sick rap, bro, yeah.
The thing with Crime Syndicate, and this is definitely just a pet peeve of mine that I don't think is a real criticism. When we're having big Justice League world-shattering events, and then we cut to guys who are yeah, we got to earn a couple bucks selling these sweatshirts from the back of a truck. I'm does not. It's peanut butter and chocolate to me. It's the same thing in DC Comics.
Two great things that go together. What does that mean?
No, it's things that I sort of don't mix. I don't like to mix.
You don't think peanut butter and chocolate go together?
And not when they're fully integrated. I'll have a Reese's Piece.
Oh my God, dude. That's a crazy thing to just say and then try to move on from. That you named two things that are famously good together and said it like they don't go together.
I feel like I could, if Pete was in the middle of his wedding, which is when you solidify your one long date, and I said, hey man, peanut butter and chocolate shouldn't be together, you'd be like, stop the ceremony. Justin, get up here. Pushes Bride out of the way. We have to settle this. But what I'm trying to say, in DC Comics, there's a thing called Intergang, and they're like an intergalactic crime gang, and I'm like, no. Not a thing.
Yeah.
And so like when we zoom in on these guys who are just dealing with like New York real estate or whatever, I'm like, it just doesn't quite track.
Well, I think it comes down to something we were talking about with the first episode where I felt like they're amping up Invincible's powers in such a big way that they need to give him those impossible bugs that were enormous just to have a threat that is big enough for him to deal with versus like Multi-Paul on the steps in DC where it was just tearing through them and it wasn't an issue. It's the same kind of thing with the Order, these crime people where I don't know, he's beyond this at this point, so I'm not quite sure what the function is of that in the season, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, they do a good job of kind of like placing things that are going to be important later and kind of cashing in on them, so...
Well, that's a good segue to talk about the thing that we get at the end of the episode. Midway through, we see a sphere that is watching the Grayson house, and at the end, we see the sphere again. Mark sees it, grabs it, which I thought was a nice... just like quick turnaround rather than doing a season-long thing of it. And then we cut to a mysterious somebody who is sitting on a chair. I'm going to put another spoiler warning here because you could probably figure out who it is, but B, it's in the credits. So
the voice gives it away. I mean, you know who it is right away.
It's a character we know.
Yes, it is Sterling K. Brown as Angstrom Levy is back. Yeah. If you've read the comics, you know how he's back. I will not say it because that is a big spoiler for what's coming forward. But how do you feel? I'm curious, Justin, in particular, well, we were talking about like an organizing principle for the season. Feels like Angstrom could be that now that Cecil has taken like a little bit of a step back.
Well, yeah, and like Angstrom Levy also occupies a little bit of that gray area because the character started out as someone who had good intentions and then was poisoned by his own ego. So like there's a potential for him to be about that gray area of what superhero morality is. I sort of feel like it's outside of the theme that I'm liking of that I just mentioned, because it feels like now he's just completely obsessed with revenge, and that is what he will be. So he feels like the cherry on top will just be like a climactic battle at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, pretty creepy, though, the way he's just watching people make out through his little floating cameras. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the internet.
Yeah.
So.
Whoa.
Anyway.
There's a lot of cameras on roofs, Pete. FYI.
Oh, shit. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's where people not just for creeps, but for security.
Oh, there's legit cameras as well, not just creep cameras.
That's Kodak's new slogan, not just for creeps anymore.
Well, hopefully that can turn Kodak around. You know what I mean? Rochester could use it.
Cha-cha-cha. Any other notes from the episode before we start to wrap up here? Anything else anybody would like to call out?
The Greasy Spoon is a tough name for a diner. I'm just saying from a sales point of view. Hard to get people. No wonder they had to fire the villains at the beginning because that's not doing enough business. The spoons are too greasy.
Great.
So if they called it the clean spoon, you would be like, there'll be a line around the corner.
Well, then now I'm like, that you're protesting too much. If you're like, hey, clean spoons here, it's like, why?
Dude, there's no winning with you.
He just wants to be called it spoons. Right?
Spoons. Yes, and it like focus on soup was something that I'm into, and Alex is feeding his money.
I am pouring it all over those green stacks of beautiful little buddies.
Wow, Pete's having sex on roofs, and Alex is fucking money. That's all.
Fucking whoa! Adopting and loving and feeding soup doesn't mean. I mean, where it goes, it goes. Where it goes,
now
it goes.
who's protesting too much?
All right, before we wrap up here, let's talk about the Invincible moment of the episode. Pete, what was your Invincible moment?
Oh, man, I was hoping you weren't going to pick me first.
Justin, what's your Invincible moment of the episode?
Oh, sorry, Alex. I was going to take Pete's answer. So, I don't know if
Alex, what's your Invincible moment of the episode?
I was hoping you guys would go first. That's why I called it.
Oh, man.
Maybe there was no. Everything was vincible.
Ooh.
I mean, there is a lot going on, and I am enjoying this so much. But I will say, and this I think is taking Pete's answer, like the opening sequence, I thought was really nice, artfully done, and something that is setting out an idea through character and, again, making Invincible a little wrong in a way that I think is healthy and tricky for a show, but it makes the season all that more exciting.
I do want to kind of comment on that before I jump and take Alex's answer. I think that the music choice too was just such a interesting kind of cool thing, and you take shots at the music a lot of the times on the show, but we got a real nice Run the Jewels in the Mauler fight that was
here's the thing, I agree
very
with you.
enjoyable.
The music at the beginning was great, and the needle drop during the fight was again not great, but at least
the guy going, hit play, we started.
It was very quiet for a lot of it, so I was like, hey, cool.
And then, to take Alex's answer, I think, jumping off what you said last time, Alex, in the last episode, the kind of like little kid who's like, oh, don't look in that box. They kind of hinted at that before in this last episode that he has nefarious things going on. And if you read the comics, you know more about that. But I think that was kind of a big giveaway.
The big one for me, and I'm maybe paraphrasing this wrong, I think it was Oliver who said, did you think that maybe Dad was right? And we talked about that a little bit, but I think that gets to what might actually be the most crucial thing of the season is not Cecil versus Mark or Angstrom versus Mark or any of those other things, but Oliver and Mark being the focus of the season potentially.
Yeah. And
with Nolan, who doesn't appear at all in this episode, as the third part of that triangle. So, yes.
The sins of the father.
Exactly.
A common phrase used with something like that.
Yeah, whether or not when they see Nolan, are they going to fight him or is he going to be on the same side?
We shall see. And in the meantime, if you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/comic book club, where you can get ad-free versions of this podcast and all the rest of our podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Android, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow. comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay invincible.
And please check out our website where we're selling roof sex starter packs, which feature a blanket, some sunscreen, and some safety straps to keep you from rolling.
Yeah, I was going to say, hit us up at our email, rooffucking@gmail.com, and let us know if you have some fun roof fucking stories.
Yeah, we're collecting them for a project, not creepy.